Senator Aisling Dolan, you have 6 minutes.
Garamagat, and very much welcome to the Minister here as well with us today, and to support Senator Pauline O'Reilly in her call here today around access for women to hormone replacement therapy. We've spoken on this before, we've had many discussions and debates, and I think it was even mentioned once about the word menopause been mentioned more times, I think, in this chamber and so on than previously in a lot of other Shanads and in governments to date. So we are openly discussing something that has not had a lot of time for discussion. And Minister, that's really crucial. We know that it's a normal life event. Like for so many things for women, it's going to happen to every single one of us. And I suppose the challenge is that sometimes women aren't as familiar that the symptoms can be tackled. Do you know that there are ways to manage these symptoms and even to associate symptoms with the menopause? So I know when we spoke before, we talked about how different, obviously all of these changes, but like things like brain fog and tiredness and irritable bowel syndrome, and even that the loss of estrogen can cause cardiovascular issues, again, that have an impact on bone and heart health. And of course, just in general experiencing poor concentration, anxiety and depression. But I suppose really, and when I spoke about this before, was that due to a lack of information and awareness, many women do suffer in silence and sometimes don't realise how effective HRT can be as well. And we know in our health service, there are inequalities on a geographical level as well. There are inequalities in terms of access to services all across the country. And this is an issue, and particularly in the West, I suppose, the area that I'm looking at. So I suppose, it's not that it is a cure-all for everything, of course, but it is a way that can help women, and having access in terms of it being free, of course, is something that would really be welcome, I'm sure, by so many women across the country. I know that a lot has been done, particularly around the Department of Health here, in terms of Minister Stephen Donnelly's focus. I know the government's focus on this as well. I know that they are looking at ways to make it more accessible, like removing the VRT and so on, or the VAT and so on HRT, which is really, really important. But I suppose, what Pauline is looking at here, I suppose, in terms of her call here, is that, that we're noting that the cost of living, she notes here in her motion, that inflation of the cost of living affects women and girls disproportionately. And of course, that's very well known. We do know that probably the most deprived group here are single mums, for example. You look across the country, probably the most deprived group of people in the country are single mothers. We know that. It's Public Deprivation Index, So, I think it is very important that we are looking at how we're going to support women, all women who will be going through this. And Minister, I know you're very supportive of this as well. So I guess the other things I suppose that I would like to mention is that, we were, so many groups are coming on board now, and I know for Minister Paschal Donoghue and Minister Hildegard Naughton today, they were launching menopause in the workplace policy framework for the civil service. I used to work in Enterprise Ireland and Science Foundation Ireland myself before. It's very important to realise that there are a lot of women who work in the public service and in the state, and that could access these treatments. And I know other companies are coming on board in terms of giving leave and supports for women in terms of the menopause and so on. But it's just really crucial that we're looking at access to supports in terms of their health. And that's really, I suppose, what Senator O'Reilly here is doing. So, Minister, I think this is crucial that we are looking at supports here. If I might ask if you can comment on as well, we have Sláinte Care Healthy Communities. We have our primary care networks that have now been opening across the country. There's one just in Tuam there, the Grove Hospital, that just opened. Those primary care networks are going to be crucial for delivering care, particularly in rural and regional areas. How do we see some of these clinics? I know there's 6 specialist menopause clinics, for example, this year. How can we rely on those services and support GPs? Because I know there was a GP manual, I think, or guide issued as well last year. How are we going to engage with those groups? GPs that are run off their feet, or is it practice nurses within GP practices that are going to support women? And, how do we just support getting access out to women across the board in relation to this as well? And Gurmil Maga, thank you for your time.